Hello, hello, Soulful Seekers. Welcome back to Trauma and Transcendence. Today's guest is a little bit different, but I think he has immense value. I've recently had an experience with him, and it's been very eventful and quite the exploration for myself. And you know that if something catches my attention, then very likely it's worth yours. Today, I have the wonderful Dale Turnbull. Dale, thank you so
Hello.
much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be on board.
And so today we're going to talk about a couple of things, largely metaphors of movement. What is that all about?
So that's actually quite a challenging question because a lot of time when you think about metaphors, people are like, what do you mean? Are you talking storytelling? What is the whole thing all about? Now, I first got interested in metaphors when I studied neurolinguistic programming. For those of you who don't know, it's basically a way of mapping how we think, what's the structure of our thoughts, how we create our problems, how we create our resources, and how we can switch those things up. And it was then I got into trainings and I heard beautiful stories that encapsulated the senses and really take you on a journey into something magical. And I always sort of understood that there is a real power in stories. And we say metaphorical communication all the time. I was working with a woman when I was doing a lot of corporate work, and she's like, "It's like I've got this thing in my throat." I'm like, "Well, what's that like?" And she's like, "It's like a spiky ball." And she's like, "Yeah, it's quite painful." So I'm like, "Well, why don't we just take it out, shave off those spikes, make it smaller, and throw it into the distance?" And what happens? And her whole throat changed. And I'm like, "That's interesting." So it got me really curious about the metaphors and the communication that we use in everyday life and everyday speech, and how we can actually learn and understand more about ourselves. But if you're a coach, therapist, hypnotist, also about our clients at a very deep unconscious level that we don't often realize. Um, I came across metaphors of movement, which I now train, teach, coach, mentor people in. And it's a whole new way of working with yourself and with others that I find really quite interesting and intriguing, and creates great awareness and empowers us to understand ourselves a lot better.
So I've seen a rather large overlap with a lot of people in the hypnosis community, a lot of people coaching and NLP doing metaphors of movement, but who else might like to train in that and take that on as a modality?
So ultimately, when I think about the unconscious mind, I mean, what is it, right? Can you put your finger on it? No, it's a rather abstract concept. So to make it sound a bit more neurological, imagine we've got our conscious side of our brain. It's not designed this way, but as a broad generalization, we've got the conscious part of our brain where we understand, we know what's going on, we make our logical decisions, and then we have our unconscious mind, as the hypnotists would take you down that road, where you've got ultimately our bodily sensations, what we're feeling, the images that come up to us. An interesting example, right? I know you've got 3 dogs. You were just showing me your beautiful pug who's resting soundly. But if you picture a dog, any dog, just get a picture of a dog, you'll picture it in a certain place in your mind. Now, it could be in front of you, maybe to the slight left, slight right. But ultimately, you don't choose that. It's coming out of our unconscious. But one of the troubles with the unconscious is, well, how do you understand something that you're not consciously aware of? Now, when people, for example, go into hypnosis, certain images might come to them as they're taking on a journey. When you, for example, do tarot, certain people might see things within the symbolism. I've trained in shamanism, and when you take someone on a shamanic drum, banging that drum, it puts the person into this place, into this space where they can explore a whole different aspect of their reality. Now, that can be great for change, great for insight, but a lot of the time we don't know what the hell it means. What does this stuff mean? What do I do with that? And what metaphors of movement does is it communicates what's going on unconsciously to conscious awareness. So as much as it's a whole modality within itself, it can easily be incorporated to any sort of modality that uses unconscious or more spiritual or esoteric or the ineffable stuff. It allows us to understand it at a more concrete level, which harmonizes our understanding and I think actually makes us more whole as an individual.
Well, now you've convinced me that I'd like to experience this via shamanic journey. So we need to book that.
I'll go through a bit of an experience. So I wanted to see how this worked. Now I've done it, but I wanted to be void of the construct, right? And so I have a friend of mine, someone who helped train me. She did a journey with somebody that she knows, and I got them to give me the feedback. And I didn't need to see the session, but I got to give me their feedback. Now, on the one hand, you've got the practitioner's experience. So, for example, when I did a shamanic journey, I pictured a guy in a swamp, in the middle of this swamp, right? And when I did the healing or whatever, we cleaned up the swamp, we did lots of stuff. Now, that was my experience as the practitioner. That may resonate with the client or not. And then you've got the client's experience and what they realize, what they come through, what energies move through them. There was a serpent and it moved through, all that kind of stuff. So I can communicate those two messages. Now, the message that comes from the person, so let's just imagine I have a serpent inside me that's going around my lungs. Let's imagine that. And then I just felt when you did the drumming, when you did the chanting or whatever trip you're on, it sort of unwound, it sort of disappeared and it went away. Now, what the hell does that mean? I mean, it sounds quite relieving that there was that change, right? But with the language, I can communicate in a way that's void of meaning, but we understand. And I'll give you two examples. Now, as a coach therapist, what I could say is, okay, so I'm trying to do this in the backwards way, but I'll give it a go. So, okay, there's a snake around you, constricting you, and that means you don't have choices, you don't have options. It means you can't express yourself. And by removing that, we create more choice, more possibility, more freedom. Okay. Now, all of those words we can interpret, like love, great word, but what love for you is different to love to me. So ultimately, we can argue about it. And if you've ever had someone trying to understand your experience and not get it, you know what that's like. Think of it like this. So, okay, so there's a snake wrapping around your log. So ultimately, you are constricted. It could be said you find it hard to breathe. And there's something that's inside you that has a mind of its own, a life of its own. And it could be seen maybe quite venomous, quite toxic, but ultimately it's wrapped around you. It's got a hold of you, and that would stop you breathing or breathing in a way that works. Now, ultimately what happened is through the change, you expelled that creature. That animal has been removed from you. There might have been a bit of a serpent's tongue to it, but that could be my interpretation. But ultimately, you're no longer constricted, so you can breathe freely. Now, if you're just to listen to that and imagine that was your situation, you can't argue any of it, because Metaphors of Movement teaches you how to communicate in a way that is not me imposing meaning, but we both know what these things mean without having to explain it. So for me, it's really empowering because I get quote unquote triggered when people try and impose things on me. I'm like, just go away. For those of you who are hypnotists out there, people who mismatch, and for those who don't know what mismatching is, it's those who always like to find the example. Me and my wife love doing this together, by the way, because we're both into personal development and we're both trying to help each other grow. So we always find the thing that doesn't work, or always find the thing wrong first, which obviously is not the best way to give feedback. But these kind of things, and it allows to really connect and help that person understand their experience and what's happening for them.
Yeah. Having had my own experience with it, and that was my first experience, by the way, with Metaphors of Movement, it was fantastic. I loved how quickly my internal realms kind of came out and were displayed before me on a canvas so that I could really get the deeper meanings behind things. And it wasn't difficult. It didn't take hours. It was very fast. It was very poignant and in the moment of where I was feeling through things. So we actually worked on money specifically. Are you still doing that research?
Yeah, so I train metaphor. So I teach coaches, therapists, change workers, or people who want to become more aware of themselves how to do this work. I actually offer free demonstrations. There'll be a link somewhere, but if you go to metaphorsofmovement.us, metaphorsofmovement.us, at the bottom of the page, there's an option for a free demo if you want to experience this firsthand. So I teach people level 1 and 2, which allows them to practice on others as well as do it themselves. But I'm moving into working with more business and money. And I was doing some explorations, which you kindly volunteered for, to understand, okay, what are the overarching structures around money that impact our lives? And it's really quite fascinating. So some people have, you've probably heard this out there, money is energy. But what does that mean? Well, that means, in theory, money is all around us. So the opportunity for money is all around us. But it's also not tangible because you can't normally grab energy. You can get a sense of energy, you can feel energy, but that's quite different. I had someone else who money was a burden. So that's like they're carrying this weight. Now just think for a moment. Is that person going to want to be financially affluent? Are they going to want to get more money? Because if money is a burden, the more money they have, the more of a weight it becomes. So by understanding our relationships to money, we can help to create shifts and changes within that area. I know we were talking with you in like money and food was the same thing. So it nourishes you, it feeds you. But ultimately, if you don't have money, you've got this whole feast and famine style thing. So if you're really affluent, or you're not. If you have a lot of money, you can consume a lot of money unless you're careful and balanced with your finances. How much do you need? So looking at these things, we can figure, okay, does this work for me? Yeah. Ultimately, the problem or challenge, for example, with the food is money perspective, if I give you bucket loads of money, it could potentially have challenges for your health and well-being because you could overindulge, for example. So we can look at different ways of looking at these structures, but they're personalized to the individual. Because I think one of my challenges in personal development is, I'll just follow this process, just do this thing, just follow this protocol. And like life is so much more complicated. Protocols and processes, normally from my experience at least, are generalizations of what work with the majority of the populace. But through the metaphors work I do, I'll have a good option, good choice, good variety. Every session is different. Every session is unique because it's the person's unique experience. And as much as it might be similar, it is never identical.
I think I took part in one of your groups a little while ago, and I just got around to finally catching the replay. I missed the live event. I was so bummed. But it was beautiful to watch because everybody had, even though the group themes were the same, everybody had a different experience, different metaphors, different perspectives, different things they were working through.
100%. Well, let's just consider this if you're a viewer or listener. So let's imagine a context where, let's say, you're stuck. Okay, stuck. What's that like? Now, stuck, for some people, it could be there's a barrier in front of them. They can't move forward. They can't progress. Some people might say it's like I'm hitting my head against a brick wall. That's how I'm stuck. Now, if you're to imagine that as an image, that's quite an interesting representation of being stuck. Now, some people might say it's like I'm in quicksand. I'm stuck. So there's two different ways of saying stuck, but the image or the representation is quite different. Some people, it's I'm stuck because I'm being held back. Now, they all have pros and cons. Now, if I'm stuck with a barrier in front of me, I can't progress, I can't move forward, I can't see a way forward if you imagine a wall, but I'm also not considering other directions. There might be a way that's right for me to go, a way that's left for me to go, or I could take a step back. The person in quicksand, by the way, quicksand, everyone thinks of quicksand from the movies. You take a step in it and you sink right into it. And you're like, oh!
It's not that fast.
Quicksand takes an age, a real age to really get stuck in it. It takes a very freaking long time. But people think, oh, but ultimately, think about it. If your feet are in quicksand, there's going to be resistance to move. Yeah. Ultimately, sure. It's going to take effort to get out of it. So if you're not motivated enough, if you're not driven enough, if you don't know where you're going, like why bother doing the effort to get unstuck if you don't know where you want to go in the first place?
And it must have took effort to get there to begin with.
Yeah, or not paying attention to where you were going in order to get too stuck into it, right? And ultimately, to get stuck in quicksand, you normally need to move, struggle a bit, but ultimately you're not actively trying to get out. Now, somebody, for example, who's being held back, that's very different because there's a whole interpersonal dynamic. It could be someone's like got you hooked on them with hooks, or someone's like holding you back with a rope. So there can be certain attachments to things. So these certain things that show up in everyday life, everyday communication, can be really insightful. This also crosses over into dreams. Like, what do our dreams mean? Well, dreams are messages from our unconscious. Messages. Some might say messages. Some might say our unconscious processing. But still, it's unconscious information. And if we know how to communicate that information, we can get real insight in our waking lives about what the dream is communicating to us, but without interpreting it, not saying, well, this could mean that. Well, we're just communicating what's going on. So it can be quite powerful. That.
Well, what got you started into the realms of metaphors of movement?
So, I mean, I've always loved metaphors, just the idea of metaphors. There's a book by, I want to say, David Gorman. I believe it's called Therapeutic Metaphors. It was the first metaphors book that I read after I studied NLP, and it was more about storytelling. And for me, I've always been interested in, okay, so what's the difference that makes the difference? I really enjoyed neurolinguistic programming because it's about, okay, how is the individual structuring the problem so we can start to change and shift that? After that, I got into something called Provocative Change Works, which is really great. It's by a gentleman called Nick Kemp, inspired by provocative therapy from Frank Farrelly. How that works is really interesting because it's a conversational model, but it's really about stretching the person's perception of their reality in a friendly way, but also quite a provocative and challenging way. From there, I heard about the metaphors of movement because it's like, oh, metaphors. Two, it was recommended by someone like yourself who's an authority within the space. They're like, you need to join this course. You need to take this course. So I just jumped straight in. And I didn't even know 100% what it was all about, but it sounded awesome. So I'm like, why not? From there, it really gave me a whole new way of seeing things. And I think for those interested in personal development or therapy, interested in therapy, if you're taking it, you might not be interested in it, but if you're doing therapy or whatever, I find there's two different people in personal development. There are either people who love working on themselves, or there are people who are really good at working with others. I was always very good at working with others, but I really struggled to work with. I remember my first NLP course. So I studied with John Grinder, the co-creator of NLP. And when I took the course, I was like coming from a corporate environment. I came in because I actually wanted to enhance my communication to increase the impact I was having with people on a more tailored level.
I'd say you've achieved that.
Well, thank you. And for me, I was like, why has everyone got so many frigging issues? Because I was just so clueless to my own potential issues. I was very good at being ignorant, awareness. Awareness is the key. Also sucks because you're aware of all your challenges. But anyway, so I wasn't aware of how unaware I was because I came in with it from a different angle. And ultimately, for me, I struggle with two things. I struggle personally to explain what's going on with me. My wife will see me and she's like, Dale, what's wrong? I'm like, what? She's like, you've been in a mess or in a state for the last couple of hours. What's up? I don't know. Now, I don't think she's gaslighting me or saying I'm wrong, but she's pretty good at this stuff. But I'm normally quite good at keeping myself in the dark. I'm very good at keeping myself blind to challenges or issues. It takes me quite a long time to be unaware.
To be fair, and I'm not saying that this was your experience, but people who have trauma, that is often the case. They become numb to their feelings, or they've been in situations that have made them feel so unsafe that they had to prioritize other people's needs, wants before their own. So they become conditioned essentially to not listen to those internal things happening. So for those of you with trauma listening to this, really take heed, because this is going to be a wonderful tool for you to possibly find and dig your way out and to start becoming a little more present, get into the exercise of, oh, what is happening in the subconscious? What am I not aware of?
So this is what I just heard. So thank you for sharing that, Amanda. And she said, digging your way out. Now let's just listen to that. So this is a phrase that Amanda just said. She didn't think about it. She just expressed it. So if you're somebody who likes to dig deep, people who like to get to the root cause, normally psychotherapists as well, people who dig deep, root cause, these are your why people. Why is it the case? But let's just imagine that, right? Digging yourself out would imply that you're in something and you're trying to dig yourself out. Now, normally digging happens underground. Sometimes you could dig across if it's a cave or whatever. But if this person is digging down, have you ever had the person who asks themselves why so much? They dig themselves into it so deep, it's such a huge way out that they're stuck. Sometimes asking why too much can be a problem because we're just digging and digging and digging. Now, to dig yourself out implies you're putting the work in, you're using your arms, you're trying to handle it, but ultimately it might be building up behind you or to a different side of you, but ultimately you're trying to get out of something, dig your way up. So it's stuff like that that can give you so much insight into what's actually going on with you, but also with your clients.
Yeah, to really identify what people are really feeling.
100%, or experiencing, because sometimes we might feel it's frustrating. Well, what's that like? Well, it's like I'm digging a hole. Well, I mean, of course it's frustrating because why are you digging? Like, where are you trying to go? What are you trying to find? I mean, are you digging for gold? Like, I found this gold thing, but now I've got to get on the surface. You know, how's that going to work? So it's a really fascinating way of these things that come up in everyday communication. We talked about overcoming trauma, like the topic of your channel. Now, if you think digging to the bottom of it is very different to overcoming something, because to overcome something, we've got a few ways of looking at this. I'll just get over it. That's one way, but how tall is the thing you've got to get over? That could be one way. Some people elevate themselves normally through knowledge, learning skills like people offer on this sort of channel, some of the things that they share. They learn, they develop, they grow their skills in order to overcome the issue. But sometimes some issues are not overcomable. So maybe you need to look at a different direction, go a different way, explore a different route. So it's fascinating just how these things show up. And because the unconscious is so expansive, and this language comes from the unconscious, I'm also still learning. I had a session the other day where I learned amazing things because it was unique and different to the person. So as much as I train this stuff and I've experienced this stuff and I freaking love this stuff, there's always more to learn. There's always more to explore.
Yeah, it's because you're really getting into that person's internal representations for things, and we're all so vastly different. We've had so many different experiences that help us build those. I think most people call it schemas, where we have certain themes and representations of things. So it's really fascinating. I could imagine that you are never bored.
I mean, yeah, because even then, building a schema. What does that suggest? There are blocks, we put stuff in place. There's maybe a concrete foundation. It's pretty solid, pretty stable. It's not going anywhere because so these are all of these different things. So this can relate to you.
It's kind of like a periodic table, and we occasionally get to pull things out that don't fit anymore.
Could be an option.
Unstable elements don't work.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's really cool. Interesting elements. But also how chemistry, how the different elements work together. People talk about, in personal development, the alchemy of change, the alchemical process. These sort of reactions, how do you react, implies two different elements are coming together. Whole different way of looking at human interaction.
So what does it look like when somebody wants to book in and explore something with you? And then you might speak to some of the things they might explore. But from what I've seen, it looks like you can play with anything and learn a lot.
100%. So, I mean, if you're curious to like learn and teach this work, so normally it works two ways. People are like, wow, this is awesome. Some people are a little bit, I'm not so sure. And other people are like, this just doesn't sound like it's for me. Now, for those of you coach therapists or those keen to learn, as I say, go to my website, happy to offer you a 30-minute session. What we'll do on that is we actually draw pretty pictures. I mean, well, not necessarily pretty. I'll give you an example. So this is a picture I drew earlier.
Is this an inadvertent way to improve my drawing skills?
I mean, to be fair, I have taken, but you don't need to be drawing. So this is an example. So for people who've learned the modality, every 2 weeks I do a practice with the whole community, not just people who've learned from me, but learned from other people. So this is somebody, they're in a queue, they're carrying like a food tray, and they're in line for this sort of prison-like food slot kind of thing. This is what their problem or challenge is like. There's some guards to the left, big open door, and then there's other prisoners to the left. So that's what we draw out. Now you look at that and you're like, what is that? That means nothing. And as I was saying before, I struggle to look at myself and actually reflect and understand my own experience. Now, I don't understand what that means. Like, what does that mean about me? But I can start to think, okay, so ultimately, you're just one in a line. You're a follower. You're following the person in front. Could be said that you're a bit of a prisoner. And they said the food was very uninspiring. So ultimately, what you're looking forward to is very uninspiring. It does keep you alive, but it's just a bit sloppy. You don't really like it. But you're chained to this because she was chained by her ankle. She's in line, so she has to stay in line. Like just from that, you start to get a bigger concept of what's going on for that person. So that's what we would do in a free demonstration. I draw a pretty picture. Now, if you want to work through a specific challenge, issue, problem, that could be relationship issues, it could be finance work. Ultimately, this isn't a solution-based methodology. And what I mean by that is it's not like I've worked with people with anger, with phobias, with multiple different things, and I have fixed problems using just this. However, sometimes in life, things are going to get worse before they get better.
Herxheimer reaction. That's how that goes. The toxins are leaving. It's going to be uncomfortable.
100%. I mean, for an example, let's just imagine somebody wants to leave their partner. Mm-hmm. That being with that partner, regardless, has certain benefits, normally financial or whatever. So by leaving that partner, there's financial hardship, there's financial challenges, there's working harder, there's logistics issues. So sometimes change is not always positive. So people resist it because life's going to get harder. I want you to make me feel better about me leaving my significant other. Now, I can make them feel better, but the reality is their life is going to suck harder in the shorter term. So what this work does is it's very good at giving us an understanding of our deeper reality, what's keeping us stuck, what's blocking us, and shaking those things up. Ultimately, so you're thinking differently about your challenges, you're acting differently about your challenges, and so you can actually start to make progress in many different areas of life. Now, things that I'll be very explicit, I don't think this works for.
It's very Jungian, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, because this is a representation of unconscious experience, you've got archetypes in there, all different types of archetypes. You've got, for those of you who do more esoteric things, you've got certain symbolism within there. For those of you who've done NLP, you've got meta programs in there. There's a multitude of different time representations. Like, it's so densely packed. There are so many layers to it. There's identity in there, and how I had, for example, a guy, and he was in a situation. So to his right was a jungle, to his left was a city, and in front of him was a field. Now, to think about it, right? If he's to take a step in the right direction, it's going to be a bit wild, but a bit crazy. But what does he need to go to be in the jungle? Well, he needs a certain amount of resources. He needs to be an adventurer. He needs to not be afraid. There's a whole host of things. Anyway, I could talk about this stuff for ages. I may have gone off on a tangent. Don't like going necessarily linear with this stuff. Where were we at?
We were talking about how it's Jungian. There's archetypes. Before that, you were headed in a different direction. I disrupted you, so sorry.
No, it's all cool. But it might not necessarily be the most pleasant. So if you're just looking for lovely feelings, I'm not going to promise that. But if you are looking for change and insight in a very different way, that I can guarantee you.
A lot of the coaches, the therapists, the IEMTers that you work with, do they then follow up with hypnosis or IEMT as part of their own expression of metaphors of movement?
100%. So actually, so there's a woman called Laurie Donnelly. She teaches IEMT, Integral Eye Movement Therapy.
One day I will get her on this podcast.
Really good, really good. Amazing work. And I joined one of her practice sessions. And what was interesting is, so the client was feeding back. So the person did an intervention A, and then they're like, well, what's it like now? And they're like, well, it's like I'm in a box. Like, okay, so they did intervention again, and they're like, there's a box with a window. And then box with a window, and the window's open. Box with a door, box with a door is open. So there was an interesting progression. Actually, on my YouTube and Facebook channels, I'm going to be doing a video breakdown. I do quite a lot of videos about this stuff because I'm like, oh, cool, interesting thing came up. Let's do a video on it. If anything, it's slightly selfish because I find I learn best by doing and talking about it. So if I don't have someone to talk about it, I'll just make a video, talk about it, and get the insight from it. So selfish but educational at the same time. So I'm going to do a breakdown of that. So what's interesting is you can see how things shift and change. Now, if you're doing hypnosis, here's an interesting question for you, or you've experienced hypnosis, why go to a beach?
Because I enjoy the sensory of it. I enjoy the sun and the warmth and the sounds and the smells. It's an atmosphere that brings me a modicum of serenity.
Okay, cool. So that's one way to look at it. Why take someone to a room?
That room may have tools or things that they need. They may need the security, the safety.
Okay, cool. So this is where we can consider it. On the one hand, if you're a hypnotherapist, where do you take your clients on your journey? And I'll break those down in a minute. Or you've got, what does a client tell you in hypnosis? So let's come to journeys first. So let's just imagine a hypnotherapist is taking you to a beach. Okay. Well, ultimately, it's an interesting place. From a hypnotic perspective, multisensory, easy to take someone into trance. But ultimately, you're in a place that's very sure. Now, ultimately, things come, they go. There's a reliability to it because shores normally change twice a day at least, depending on where you're at. So there's a surety to it, but it's also always different. It's ever changing because a beach is never the same. Also, it's quite a relaxing place to be. It's a place you can be laid back. You can be supported. Your whole body can be supported in a unique and different way. So ultimately, you don't need to maintain your position.
I'm never going to practice hypnosis the same again now. that was very fast. You just blew my mind.
Now, if we go to a room, ultimately, who do you take to a room? Now, you could have a room with tools in as a hypnotherapist and presuppose that. But let's just imagine someone's gone through quite a traumatic experience. You could take them to a beach, but at a beach, as much as they're relaxed, they're also exposed. They're exposed to the elements, whereas in a room, they are safe. There are doors. There is a barrier. There is a transition. There is a threshold to go through. Why do you take people through a door? Because they're going through a different threshold into something new. You can control who's in the room, who's in the space. So depending on the problem you've got, you can use a different location. Why do you take someone on a path? Why do you take someone on a journey? Let's just imagine I'm going nowhere. Life's going nowhere. Well, I'm going to take you on a journey on a path because it presupposes by the nature of a path, there is a guided direction. There is a guided thing. Paths normally lead somewhere. Normally, they're quite a natural environment. There's a lot going on multisensory. So it's a whole new way at how you do inductions. Now, let's just imagine you take someone on a hypnosis, and I think there's two types of hypnosis. You've got guided hypnosis where I tell you everything and you give me nothing. Not my
I don't do
preference.
that anymore.
No.
My inductions, my clients bring themselves, so it's a little closer to what you do, but now I'm going to be looking at the metaphor of it more deeply for sure.
Oh, I'll go to the next level. I'm so excited. The next thing is, let's just imagine a client's there and they're like, oh, I'm in a trance. And okay, so what are you noticing? And it's like, there's a big tree to the right. Okay, so what's right for you is quite large. It's quite natural. It could be said there are some resources in what's right for you. What's right for you could give you shade. It could protect you from the environment. Oh, but also what's right for you is in your way. So if you were to take a step in the right direction, you would come up against something that's quite natural. So if you wanted to go right, you might need to find a way around it. Boom. So ultimately, if a client is giving you information through their trance, you can write it down, you can describe it. And then when they come out of trance, you can describe what's happened with them unconsciously, communicate in a conscious way, and they're like, whoa. And because I'm not saying the tree, well, the tree represents emotionality or whatever. You can say, now what's right for you is growth. There is something growing that's right. It's quite slow. It took a while to get that way. The whole communication level is interesting and it's not imposing. Now, the final aspect of that, if you can get a map of their unconscious structure. So let's say the person hitting their head against a brick wall, if I know what their problem is and I've mapped out their landscape, just drawing a pretty picture of it, I can take them into a trance. So we're going to go into, so let's imagine there's a wall in front of them. Now we're going to take you into a place where you have that barrier ahead of you, that way that stops you seeing forward, that way that stops you from progressing, that's giving you a bit of a headache. Now, some people might say you've been using your head to try and progress through this and you've been meeting resistance. But in this place, in this space, we're going to take a step back and we're going to just explore what's right for you. Because ultimately, if you take a step in the right direction, the barrier that you used to look forward to is now left behind. In addition, I was working with a client the other day. We did some different stuff. And I said, well, what's happened to that problem now? And they're like, well, I mean, it feels quite distant. If you know your submodalities, distant. I feel like I've left it behind. So if you think behind is behind, left is left. So left behind is normally in the past. So I now know their problem is no longer current. They've moved it. So their language and understanding these things can also help you know, has your change worked and what's happening inside the client.
Smoking cessation is my least favorite thing to do. Admittedly, it's just not. I even trained with Vinnie Brigance to get a little better at it, to be more comfortable, to be more effective. But from now on, I'm going to be testing every person that I work with to see where that problem is in the spatial sense of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different spatial modalities. So, I mean, metaphors of movement works explicitly. You've got mental space psychology from Lucas Dirks, who does some really great work looking at, like NLP talks about submodalities in space. He does a lot of great work there. And I think because we saw so many things in space and space incorporates so much, being able to work with spatial modalities and being able to communicate those things. So if there are any IEMTers, eye wigglers out there, when you do the I, me, self, and you can use this communication similarly. So let's just imagine you've got you, and you is in front of me and big, and our I is here, or me is here. It's like, oh, so you look down on me.
Yeah.
You are a lot bigger than me, and I see me as small. You can talk about all of those relationships, because for me, the power about this is because I've been so unaware, and I struggle with awareness. It's helped me to understand. I remember at HypnoThoughts, I was working with a woman and I was explaining this, and she's like, so you're telling me that when my husband says he doesn't know, he actually doesn't know? I'm like, yeah, he's clueless. He's honestly ignorant.
And he knows he doesn't know.
And he knows he doesn't know. And you're trying to get this information out of him and he just doesn't have a clue, you know?
Oh, you've been an incredible speaker in every single place that I've had the pleasure of seeing you present, whether it's been HypnoThoughts or other conferences. You've got some coming up. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
I do. So I'm doing 2 conferences. I'm going to, I've got a few different ones. I'm going to London in November, the London Hypnosis Convention, on the 14th, 15th, and 16th of November, I believe. So if you're in London, come along. I'm going to be talking about leveraging metaphorical communication for a change. So I'm going to be talking about this stuff, doing demonstrations, eliciting from the group, so you'll get a real sense for it for yourself. But I'll also have a vendor table, so I'll be doing demonstrations the whole time, so you can always come by and do a demo, so you can get a real sense of it there. I've applied for a few different ones. I'll probably be at HypnoThoughts next year, also the Hypno Expo in, I want to say Orlando. But yeah, I'm looking for different ones out there. But yeah, lots of different things coming up. And my next Metaphors of Movement training for those keen to learn will be in February, March next year. So it's going to be really exciting times. I think I've got the super early bird price up at the moment. Prices do change and fluctuate, but yeah, happy to converse with everyone who's a bit curious, bit interested, or has been like, okay, this sounds cool, but yeah, I want to experience. As I say, I can give you a demo as well,
Is
because
that
ultimately,
virtual training?
yeah, it's online. It's online. So yeah, it's 20 hours of virtual training, 5 hours of post-conference training. You get like a whole metaphor session with me. So you get a whole thing of if you were to just do that, what it would be like, but it's easily integratable. And for me, it's really the language and speaking in a different way, and understanding things from a very different lens, that nobody really is teaching.
Definitely not. And it really leaves an impact. I love the efficiency of it. I love how quick, but also just how much I was able to learn about myself in that brief amount of time. And then there were so many options and solutions that started to unfold, and then even synchronicities. So it's something that I've enjoyed experiencing. I can't wait to learn more. You may or may not see me in that class, if not the one following after. But I think it's a wonderful tool. And so, what if someone's not a practitioner? How can they use this to work on themselves, to have more awareness, kind of like you've been sharing?
Well, I do metaphors for myself more or less every day, and I've got a little metaphor
Wow,
book because I'm like that kind of cool. Because I've never been a journaling fan, you know. I write in my
I
journal,
could
I'm like,
appreciate that. Sometimes
"Mhm,
you don't know what to zone in on, you don't know what to write, you can't get to the heart of it.
yeah, get to the heart of it, metaphor. So, I mean, I do like little drawings for myself, those you can see. So, this I've got like a hole missing in my chest. So, like, there's a piece of me missing, lack of fulfillment. I've got like in a dark place, there's lots of hooks, there's like demons and stuff. So, but what it allows me to do is it allows me to better understand and reflect on my understanding of what's actually going on inside me and with me. And what I like is even if you don't know what the problem is, you can explore it. Like I was telling you about my wife highlighting, I was like, okay, so this thing that my wife has noticed, there's clearly something up, but that whole thing, what's that like? And I can start drawing that out, start understanding it. And even better still, you don't, I mean, it can be useful to know the context of someone's problem, but when I do demos with people, I don't need to know. Like the work that I did with you, Amanda, I know we were talking about finance specifically, and you gave me some because I was doing some research. But ultimately, I don't need to know. So the problem you've got, I don't need to know. The realizations you get, I don't need to know. Ultimately, it just all comes together inside you, and it can be really powerful because then you can just let go of the story. You don't need to think about all the things or where it came from, all that sort of stuff, and it's a really unique and different way to look at things. So I find if people are stuck, it's a great different lens, as I say.
You're a very busy guy. Every time I see you, you are innovating, you're speaking, you're literally in movement every single time. I hate to add something to your plate, but if there was ever going to be a class for using metaphors of movement for self healing, self awareness, I could see that going really well. That would be amazing.
This is interesting because ultimately, in the level 1 and 2 course, you learn all the fundamentals to practice it, but do it on yourself. So I suppose I could teach it as a side modality, and but one of the things I actually do, because with coaching and therapy, it's great to do like one-offs or things like that, but it's also good to see progression over time. And let's face it, if I draw a pretty picture and I talk about it and we do some stuff in it, how do we know that it's worked? I mean, for me, it's all about how do we know it's worked. So one of the things I actually do, I put together something called the Metaphors of Movement Personal Development Community, and we, for those who have trained in it, we meet twice a month, and we do basically each quarter. I do like a different frame, and you pick a whole area of life. So this month I did finance. The week before I did like money. Some people have done their relationship to time. We pick a huge area of life, and the idea is we want to create shifts and changes. And for example, one woman was there, and by the end of it, she realized, well, I don't want to be a counselor. I just get no joy out of it. So she's now training to be more like moving away from like insurance based work and actually moving more into a private practice, which has different challenges, right? But there was one woman who was working on her health and fitness, and by the end of it, she realized, I'm actually pretty happy with how I am in that context. So what I find fascinating is it gives you really different insights. It's not your standard, I'm going to be fitter, I'm going to weigh less, or whatever your thing. Ultimately, for me, it really helps you become just congruent with who you want to be. But yeah, for personal development, it's a great tool. But yeah, levels 1 and 2 give you the fundamentals. You don't need to be a coach or anything like that. If you just want to work on yourself, we also do the work in the course. So you also get your own change and transformation there as well. So
That's incredible. I didn't know you had the community. That's an amazing way to just keep the work moving and then also have incredible value for the people that have signed up and can continue doing their own self-work exploration.
100%. And it's practice, and other people, like, I learn from everybody, just because, like, the way it works, because it's unconscious, everyone's got their own knowledge base, or from past, or whatever you like to say. But because everyone's got their own frame, I will learn stuff from other people, they'll learn stuff from me, and you practice the work at the same time. So you work on yourself, you practice, and to do this work, like, it's a very fun, friendly, connected community as well. Like, normally, people who I don't necessarily get along with don't normally join, because it's got a certain flavor to it. You've got to be open and flexible and liking that kind of way of working, because it works directly with the unconscious. It's not rigid. So yeah, normally the rigid people don't like it as much. So I really like the people who do the work as well.
Thinking it kind of makes the unconscious more available than hypnosis for some people, because if they are not visual, they can't see. You're really tapping into, well, what's that feel like? So they're having to use all of their senses.
Well, what I'd actually challenge and actually disrepute. So, as much as people say I'm hitting my head against a wall, it's not an image. It's also not a feeling. It's actually created within a spatial system. So, for people like, I don't visualize, oh, sorry if you don't visualize, I didn't mean to say it like that. But if I struggle with visualization, because it's working in space, I mean, do I get a picture of me banging my head against a big wall? No, I get a sense that that's there. I get a sense that that's there. So it's more of a, you just have a knowing of that environment. And what's great about it is people are very good at defending their own experience. So it's very difficult as a coach or therapist to impose what you think, because the person will just disrepute it. They'll be like, no, it's not like that. Yeah. Oh, but it is. No, it's not. They'll argue. So if you're worried about implanting ideas or suggestions, stuff like that, is very, very difficult to do, because people will actively defend it in a really interesting way.
I don't have a lot of those clients, but when I do, that is the most difficult part of what I do as a hypnotist and with someone who works with trauma, because at some point they get into a state of, it's either learned helplessness sometimes, or other times it's just pure disbelief that anything better can exist. And they will go to bat for it and defend it. And it's like, okay, do you really want to keep it though? And it's just so hard to get through sometimes. That's probably the biggest challenge I have. So the way that you move with it is entirely different. I think it's utterly fascinating and really valuable.
Well, an interesting consideration. If they're defending, presupposition of defending is we're under attack, right? So there's a whole element of war. Now, war is win or lose. So if they don't defend, they are a loser.
But sometimes we have to let things go in order to move forward and thrive. And that's what I'm always trying to show them.
How many people have to actually be defeated in order to change? Yeah. They have to surrender. They have to give up on the story they've had in order to come to terms with it, make peace with it in order to do something different.
Exactly. Well, beautiful transcenders of trauma, as you're listening to this, I hope that you've enjoyed Dale. And I know that if you have any questions for him or you want to experience a demo, that you can reach out for him. I'm going to give all of the links possible. Maybe this course is for you. Maybe this is something you work on for self-development and awareness, or maybe you actually choose to be someone who embodies this work so much more deeply. And either way, I'd love to hear about it. Dale, any other things you want the audience to hear today before we begin to wrap?
All I will say is life is yours. So just have fun, enjoy it, and as always, keep on taking steps.
All right, Soulful Seekers, I'll leave you with this, but as always, stay happy, stay healthy, most of all, stay inspired. Bye for now.